Well, hi there. This is Ron Rogers, and you see that guy in the center there with the hat, not the baseball cap, but the brown hat there. That is Brent Taylor. Now, Brent Taylor is the president of the Antique Airplane Association. I just got done with our little fly-in down there, and it was, oh gosh, the weather was beautiful. It was fun, and one of the things Brent did was gave a tour of the area and a bit of the history. Now, Brent's father started this a little bit over 50 years ago, and Brent's son seems to be very active and probably going to pick up where he left off. But he's got a lot of interesting stories on the history, a lot of funny stories, interesting facts on the airfield I found out too. So it's really kind of a cool deal. I hope you enjoy it here and just listen in and follow along. I think you'll enjoy it.
Let's go for a hike.
Oh, is that to hit you with?
Maybe
Why
to
is
hit
it
you
that
with.
everybody asks Brent that same question?
Actually, it's for my bad ankle. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to walk down towards the end of the east-west runway, which is the original runway, and talk a little bit about how this place came to be. Because a lot of people don't realize it. Uh-oh, the leprechaun's looking at me. Giggling. All right, so most people, put it this way, how many of you people, I know a lot of you have been here, but how many know any of the history of this airport and how it got to be here?
I know a little bit.
You should, because you were here about 2 years after that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, my dad started the Antique Airplane Association, of course, in 1953, and but he always wanted his own airport when we were growing up as kids. And we looked at every farm in about a three-county area. And in December 1969, this property had come up. My folks bought it, and all it was going to be at that time, because the flying was still in the Como, all it was going to be at that time was the family farm and the family strip. And my dad landed the first airplane out here on June 20th, 1970. That red Porterfield that's a part in that hangar, 21994. And not to put a damper right away, but my dad died on June 20th, 2020, on the 50th anniversary of the war. I think he planned it that way. At the end of that, I think. So anyway, let's take a stroll. So 1969, all this was a farm, old farm, thin log, been had corn growing on it. And we started by the springtime, no crops. We laid in the first runway, which you're standing right about in the middle of the runway here. We called it the East West Runway, 1,600 foot. Uh, and like I said, Dad landed the Porterfield in here first thing June 20th, and we opened it up. But this is going to be the family farm. Flying was still at Ottumwa in 1970, and we had the first official event over here was a corn boil. We invited everybody that was attending the flying over there on Thursday night to come over here to the corn boil. And we had, I don't know, we had 40 or 50 airplanes, including our first twin, which was a bamboo bomber, being flown by Jimmy Kramer, who was one of Dick Bach's kind of accolades in that. Jimmy was 19, and I'm telling you what, he could fly the bomber. When he left out of here, he put on an aerobatic demonstration with the bamboo bomber. Good. And that airplane, how many were in Oshkosh this year?
I was.
Yep.
The turquoise and Linus Kramer, anyways, I think. That's that airplane. That was the first bomber, first twin that landed at the EA. It was there at Oshkosh this year. So, like I said, we had a whole group of airplanes that year. That building was the original building, hangar number one. That's all that was there. And we were having trouble with the city fathers. The museum was trying to buy property on the Tacoma Airport, and we thought we had a deal made. And then my dad started reading the fine print. And it basically said if any of our members did anything wrong at any time that they didn't like, they could come in and take the museum, the property, and the whole thing. Dad and the board said no. So we had a meeting in that hangar the next April. It used to be, well, the trees are growing up now. Great big cot at my dad's home. Our board president, Harold Lossner, and George Heffinger says, well, if we're going to have the flying out here eventually, let's do it now. They grabbed chainsaws and they went down, cut the neighbor's trees down.
Got a little too deep.
Now the neighbor was fine with it. Anyway, and so we started organizing then to have the first flying in 1971. There was no north-south runway And in fact, where the driveway behind the office and that goes, that's an old county road bed. And that road used to drop, and there was a barn there, and it was a farm where the main museum hangar is a barn, and it dropped right down into a hole. There's 2 bridges down there in the depth of that hole, and we had to fill all that to build a runway. And I can't remember how many cubic yards, but we had a guy do that, and it was terrible. And we were actually still trying to operate off of 2. We had Lockheed 12s and everything else going off of this runway the first year we had the flying. But the die was cast. Everybody liked it. We're out here. We could control our own destiny. Like I say, it's a privately owned. There's no federal, state, or local money's not a dime in this facility anyway. It's all done with private money, donations, and a lot of hard work by an awful lot of volunteers over the years. And by the way, if you got any questions while I'm talking, just shout them out, and I'll ignore you in order. But anyway, 71 was the first flying. I can't remember how many airplanes we had, but it was a learning thing. We had never done anything like this when we had to fly in Atacama because it had facilities and that. So we had to do things like start building showers, baths, and arranging for food. During those early flyings, my mom and my aunt did all the feeding of all the crew up there at the thing during flying. Until they got tired of doing it a few years later, and we had to go to professional service type thing. We installed gas tanks, did the whole thing to build an infrastructure to have a fly in it. That type thing. Watch yourself. That's it, Miles. Sit in the front. So the flying has grown from there. Now, a lot of people will probably remember they not have been there, but know that the flying was held at Atacama for a lot of years, or so they think. The flying was held at Atacama for a total of 13 years. It's been held on this facility now for over 50. But we still have people that think somehow Atacama was longer than that. It wasn't. And we create our own destiny. And it, like I said, my dad was a very rare individual. He had a dream. This airport, this flying, that museum were his dream. There's really not too many people can make a dream like that come true. And he did it with a lot of help from a lot of people, including his business partner, Jack Lau. And when Jack passed away, he left a lot of money so we could build the museum and that out here and whatnot. So that's the basics. Now, you got any questions, first of all, before I go on?
So how much was actually getting, you said, logged out of here? Like,
well, this is all, there's like...
It was thick as this, or?
Well, this is all clear, but back like where my folks' house and that, there's 50-some acres of trees and woods, and there's obviously on that side, and they logged a lot of it out. They would cut like walnut basically out of it, but it wasn't like they were clear cutting it. Mm-hmm. They were logging it. It's actually been done twice. So, cool. In fact, the last couple times we logged it, a little bit off subject. It was Amish loggers. We had a guy come out, Omar, and he was wanting to log it. And the Amish, at least around here, they will go down, they will mark the trees, they will give you a list, and they will pay you cash on the spot before they ever put a blade to a tree. Then they'll go cut them and they'll drag them up to wherever you want, so you can take the list and identify stuff. So this Omar, this young Amish kid, he was driving the skid loader and all that business, and the log skidder, which he wasn't supposed to do. And he shows up in the fall, late at night at the office. They had somebody that was driving back and forth. He says, "Can I use your phone?" And he's covered in hydraulic. I said, "Yeah." And he goes in. What happened? After he got off, "Oh, we blew a hydraulic hose on the skidder." I said, "I ordered the new." I said, "Omar, how are you getting in the house tonight?" The office were very strict. He said, "Well, I keep another set of clothes in the barn for just such an occasion." So anyway, so yeah, and the only real crop we've had on here, we hay it often a year, and we give the hayway to our neighbors if they get it off at a certain time and that type thing. And of course, hay jumps up and down in price, but we've had some interesting things happen here. The first accident we ever had out here was before the big flying. It was early 1970. We were still living in town. My folks hadn't built their house yet. Dad and I come driving around the corner one morning when we're having a Iowa chapter meeting. And the Fairchild down in that field was one, or actually it's on this side of the fence, but it's one landing. And the individual had landed short, and he bounced over the fence, but he broke a bolt and landed. Okay, how the hell are we going to get this thing up to hangar number 1? no loss. We used my dad's pickup. We all picked up on it. We laid the wing on his pickup. The Fairchild's in Brazil now. Got shipped to Brazil several years ago.
Was that a 24?
Huh?
That's 24, was it?
Yeah, it was a Warner Power 24. And in fact, it was one my dad had owned. The guy that wrecked it, my dad had sold it to the guy that owned it before him, who was our insurance man. So we've had, out of the way. We've had a lot of different airplanes in here over the years. Anybody want to take a guess what the biggest airplane ever been in here was?
Caravan on floats or a DC-3?
Never had a DC-3.
B-25.
B-25 is it. We had a
Oh.
B-25. Wally Fisk was in here with B-25.
That was Wally, was it?
Well, that
was Wally?
Caravan on
Huh?
floats.
That was
looked-
Wally Fisk?
Yeah, that
That's
was
good,
Wally.
that, yeah.
Did
That's
you?
good, yeah.
He'd come in here, we didn't know it, he'd come here when we used to have a pumpkin drop. We're not the first people to do the pumpkin drop, but we did kind of perfect it because they used to have them in Wisconsin. In October, pumpkins are a commodity. You know, once Halloween's over, you get all the pumpkins you want for free. It started on a lark, so we started dropping pumpkins out of airplanes the weekend after October. And it went on for several years. Hell, it was 10 years before anybody hit the Target, which is a old cut down van we had with a 50-gallon drum on it. And we did it down South End. And then Wally had always said he wanted to do it. And he takes it in out of his 1,900-foot strip out in the hills.
Yeah, North Dakota,
So-
South Dakota.
We're down doing the pumpkin drop one day. We got 15, 20 airplanes. You can find this video on YouTube. Here comes this B-25 in the pattern. Son goes, well, that's Wally, because he just done the props on it for Maxwell. Ben was working for Maxwell. Gear comes out, flaps come out, he's landing. And he landed right on the north end of the runway going south. He jumped on the brakes to see where he could get action, so he skidded about 120 feet or so, we measured. Then he just kind of let it roll till he got basically to the end. He wasn't braking hard. And he come and had chili lunch, and everybody's like, wow. My dad was really impressed because my dad flew a lot in 25s in Korea when he was on the detached service unit. And Wally says, take me down the end of the runway and I want to see what it looks like in case something happens going out of here. So we went down where we do the pumpkins and did it. And then he come back and he says, can I get some pumpkins? How much you want? He says, you can put about 300 pounds on a Bombay goes. So the boys picked out the biggest pumpkins they had, and they got up in there and they loaded them in there. And Wally loaded up, and he went out and he did the Doolittle thing, and he literally was off just past the wind tee, taking off to the side. He was really light on gas. Cleaned it up, come around, and we watched the video, and if he'd have been 40 foot to the west, he'd have obliterated the target. It was like orange napalm hitting the ground. Oh, it was great. And come by and made a flyby in that. But it turns out he had the customer in the right seat of the airplane this whole time. We didn't know that was the guy who was selling it to. I think it's in India, or last I knew it was in Indiana over in Huntington.
Was it, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you know, pumpkins are disposable, just like the TVs are. You know, Warren Peach. We were up there a couple of weeks ago, and he said, the only time you lock your car in Minot is this time of the year, because if you don't lock it, you'll come back and be full of zucchini.
Make sure to lock the airplanes, what it is. So anyway, yeah, we had the pumpkin drop for years. It was a lot of fun. We ended up having my nephew show up in a helicopter for a few years. And you might think that he won right off the bat. No. It took him about 4 years because they would not go, he wouldn't go into a hover because we had other airplanes behind him. So he would slow down, but it took them about 3 or 4 years to figure, once they had it figured out, then they could hit the target every time.
Bam.
Yeah, from 500 foot. We also had,
What's
we
the
had,
prize for that?
well, what the prize was a terrible crocheted pumpkin and a sash. And it was a traveling trophy. And it went as far one time, Applegate's here, they had a gal that was an exchange student from Czechoslovakia or Romania or something, and she won it. Thought, well, that's the last one. She sent it back the next year so we could give it away at that time. And we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun with the pumpkin drop. We had a lot of fun with other things too. So, and we've had visitors through the years that just stop by. You know, we'll hear something come out of the hangar, and it might be something unusual.
Any toilet paper drops?
Oh, we used to do that, but everybody does it.
Everybody.
Everybody does it. Quite frankly.
Yeah, but how many times can you cut it?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story.
Okay.
So we had an old L3. In fact, we still own it. It's stored up in Wisconsin. L3 Aranca. And I'm a young guy, you know, like him. And I'm up one day cutting toilet paper, and I thought it would be a really good idea to let it completely unroll and get up underneath it and go right up straight through it.
Oh,
So I did, right up straight through it, and well, in an L3 you went about that much.
okay.
And leveled off, and and all of a sudden I started smelling something burning. And of course in an airplane, that's bad. Immediately chopped the throttle. I was over here, put that thing in a slip so hard I blew a bunch of inspection covers off of it because I'm going to the ground, man. And I got out, and what had happened was that I hit it perfectly, and that roll went in the valve cover or in the baffle and packed up against the back cylinder and was smoldering down there. Lesson learned. That's about the
I
last time
just
I
cut him with
anyway.
the wing.
Well,
I don't think I want to do that.
What's
when
wrong,
but when you're
Brandon?
19
Toilet
years
Oh,
old,
right. All right. What is that? Piss and vinegar?
yeah,
thing?
something like that. So, and then we had another incident. I told you the Porterfield that's in the hangar there was the first airplane to land there. Both my brother and I cut our teeth on that 50 horse Porterfield. My brother ended up in a pond with it. So he was out flying it one day. This is early 72, 73. And him and another couple buddies the CAP had a Cub, and they were the only two guys they would let fly because they're only CAP kids who could fly a tail dragger. And they're horsing around over by a tumble. And we figured it was carburetor. I said, quit. But when it quit, my brother was only about 700 foot. And when he rolled out, he really didn't have any place to go. And there was one field that he thought he could make, but parked on the edge of that, on the far edge of that field, pond, there was a pond, and on the far edge of that pond were 4 hay racks. And he saw pretty quick that he wasn't going to make it over the hay racks. So he just reared it up, installed it, and put it in the pond like a movie. And it went up on its nose and did a 180 and come back down to rest. And the pond was barely big enough for the airplane. He busted the windshield and crawled out over the top. It gets better. So the two other guys landed in a field in the Cub. This woman had been driving by, saw my brother, and stopped and picked him up. And he says, you got to get me to a phone, you got to get me to a phone. So they drove up to her house. And the other two guys run down from the Cub from another field. They didn't land in the field they should have. They landed in another, and they run over there. The one guy went running up to another house to bang on the door. And one guy went to check on Barry, thought he was still in the airplane. Well, that individual didn't swim. He's standing in waist-deep water going, Barry, Barry, Barry. So my brother gets at this house. He picks up the phone, he calls out here, and he says, Dad, he says, the engine quit, and Dad says, you okay? And yeah, that's it. And somebody jumps on, get off the phone, there's been an airplane accident. It's a party line, right?
You're right.
My brother hangs up. And before that, Dad says, where are you at? And he says, I think we're over by Eddyville. So a couple guys took off and headed to Eddyville. They circled over, they couldn't find it and come back. Finally, the mess got sorted out, and we went over, drug the airplane out, and flew it. We had replaced some tubing in it because it froze up that winter and I was back flying in the summer. And then my brother, I really should go on it because he's passed away a year ago.
There were witnesses.
Yeah.
Was that the year after he nosed it over right there?
Yep.
With a wood prop?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that was
And
a really good
and that
prop.
wood prop is like in
Yes.
yeah.
And that was really a good wood
Yeah,
prop. I
I
got that
watched
from Dev
it.
Warren. It was good.
I was 16 years old, or 15 years old, and I watched him do that.
He was out horsing around. He come in, he landed, he's taxiing with the tail, and he turned off the thing and it went up on its nose.
Yeah.
I'm a senior in high school, and I'm a senior, and all our vehicles were involved, so my mom would come pick me up from school and that. Put it on its nose, they put it down, and they rolled it down there, and they took the prof off, and a bunch of guys caught a log and wired it onto the hub. Remember that kind of thing?
Yeah, I remember that.
My mom shows up at school. She says, I get in the car, I know something's wrong. I said, what's wrong, Mom? She says, don't get mad, but your brother wrecked your airplane today. I says, mad? She said, well, he feels really bad. I said, not near as bad as he's gonna feel. So in the meantime, they got it down. You remember Ned the Fed?
Yes.
We had an FA guy called Ned the Fed.
Yeah.
Ned
Ned the
Powers.
Fed.
Ned the Fed. That's what, he's a great guy. Ned was a real old timer.
Yeah.
So he goes into my dad and he says, are you gonna talk to your oldest son about that whole thing, you know, taxiing with the tail in the air? And Dad says, no. Why not? When his brother gets out of here, he's gonna kill him. And anyway, so yeah, that was, so I got a witness on that
Oh yeah.
one type thing.
Yeah.
So,
I'll always remember that.
well, now Carl, what were some of the dumb things that you did out here?
Oh, I've never done anything here until a few years ago. Apparently you used me as an example at the morning safety briefing.
Well, Jim White wasn't available, so I had to use somebody.
I won't go into any details, but it had to do with the fact that on the old barbecue walker, the oil cap was a little loose, and as I was taxiing out by the hangar, I noticed oil spitting out on the windshield, so I thought I better get out and put the oil cap on. I left it running. Well, apparently the powers that be thought that was the wrong thing to do, but it made great fodder for the morning safety briefing, and so I'm glad I was able to contribute.
So Jim White, I used to use Jim all the time. Jim's dad took me for my first time before time when I was a kid, Lowell.
Yeah.
But Jim had a booker, and Jim was always good for it. Jim would do something about half dumb once in a while, like turning right on takeoff and going over the buildings to catch the rest of his booker buddies, so they get formation.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I would use Jim, no formation, no flying over the buildings, and I would use Jim for the bad example for the day. And he was always game for it, type thing, so he's a good guy. And that's one of the things we do at our briefing. One of the reasons we give the briefing is a lot of people aren't familiar with how we run things around here flight-wise. It's all CNBC. We use flagmen instead of radios and that. Like I say at the briefing, Bernoulli flies the airplane, not Marconi. Stay off the radio. Put the head out of the window on that and watch the flagman. And we've been doing it that way 50 years. And if everybody is briefed and everybody's doing the same thing, basically, it works like a charm, doesn't it, Paul? And any of you other guys that fly around here, it works great. Type thing. So I think what Josh just does here. It does work. Yes, it does. It works very well. But you got to have everybody on the same page. This is what it amounts to. It works quite well. So, what other stories? I mean, every one of Jack's airplanes was hanging from the hanging from the rafters.
This doesn't have anything to do with Blakesburg, but in 1965, when the Mississippi flooded badly, the 3M company that was on the Illinois side of the river was shut down. And Straley Flying Service at Clinton, Iowa, where I learned to fly, had a Cherokee 6 right off the factory. And we loaded it. They had 3M had to have they had to have this chemical to continue to operate. We loaded 3 55-gallon drums in that Cherokee 6 with the back seats out. I refueled it as a 16, 15-year-old kid, and I could bounce that 6 with my index finger on the spinner hub.
Yeah.
And then we landed, I don't know if you guys know, but right across the river from, kind of close, but right on the same side of the river as the 3M plant is the Cordova drag strip. And we landed that 6 fully loaded on the Cordova drag strip.
So what'd you get for a quarter-mile run?
We got out alive. But then we were a lot lighter.
Brent, I did just remember in 1974, I think they did the cereal commercial here.
Oh, well, it was,
74, 75.
Mini Wheats commercial. You're talking about Jack, my brother and Jack. So we did they did a frosted Mini Wheats. It was in the 70s, 74, 76, something like that. And we shut the whole airport down. We had a Fairchild 71 museum, and my dad did the flying. Fairchild 71, pretty big machine. And we had this thing, they had a banner up there and everybody walking up the thing, and my dad would fly over, then come in and land. The Mini Wheats kids would jump out, right? And they're filming it up there. And Jack Monroe, who was a great guy, my brother would tend to cross
Monroe or Grainer?
Huh?
Monroe or Grainer?
No, it was Monroe.
Monroe.
It was Jack. No, Anyway.
The other Jack.
Yeah. Jack Monroe decided he's going to go fly his booker. We had the airport closed because we're coming across traffic. And he's taxiing out, and my brother goes out, and he was flagging. I said, Jack, you can't go. We got field closed for this. And Jack, I'm going to go flying that, this, that, and that. And Barry said, no, you're not. I'm going to go fly. And it, deteriorated. My brother reached in and grabbed his goggles and pulled them out like this and let him fly. And Jack said, I'm going to get out and whip your ass. Jack's a pretty big guy. Barry says, shut it off and get on out, let's go at it type thing. And it was, we'd have occasional, we would have things like that.
And I remember the guy in the Citabria pulling the banner that said
Mini Wheats,
Yeah. he dropped the banner, and he dropped it in the wrong place. And your dad went after that guy.
Well, it was right
on
my
the
dad's
right.
way when he was landing type thing. So it was, yeah, well, we used to, for a lot of years in the early days, he remembers, we did have air shows out here. The last day of the flying would be what we call public day. We'd have an air show. We had some really big name air show pilots, guys like Frank Price and Freddie Ludke and Pinky Opp. Art never flew here.
Oh, he didn't?
No, Art didn't never flew here.
Okay.
And various others. And man, there's, in fact, we were talking about that. Pinky Opp was very well known in the Midwest. Flew T6, flew a Cessna 150 Aerobat, flew a big stinker pitch, but the T6 was the act to watch. And he took off on this runway, short runway, going east, started an air show. And right about where that 195 is, he pulled up and snapped that thing on takeoff with the gear coming up. And I was 16, 17, I'm like, oh, man, that's impressive type thing. Ludke did his thing with Harold Newman, used to fly out here in the
Harold
Monaco.
Newman, yeah, he
Harold
would
used
do
to
the
fly,
air race
who was a
thing with his monitor.
1930s race pilot.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of well-known, I won't say celebrities, but aviation luminaries in that. And the difference between our flying and others is we let those guys come enjoy themselves. And most of the time you could meet, it might be Dwayne Wallace, it might be the Newman brothers, it might be Harold Newman, it might be Roger Don Ray. Yeah. Roger Don Ray was one of the nicest ones of the whole. They were all nice in that, but they would come just enjoy themselves. And if you engaged them,
Paul Poberesny used to
Paul
come every
Poberesny
year.
was a lifetime member. He was. If you engaged them, they would be happy to tell you. So years ago we had it's about right here. Mike Fullman's Bamboo Bomber was sitting here, and I'm running around like I do with a chicken with my head cut off, and I see Dwayne Wallace, and I knew Dwayne fairly well. Played with him and his wife, and so he's talking. And I come back. Mike waves me over. He says, and Dwayne's walking off. Air Master's parked down there. And he says, "Hey, do you know who that guy is?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, he sure knows an awful lot about bamboo bombers." I says, "Yeah, he designed it." And he went, "That's Dwayne Wallace?" I said, "Yeah." And that's those guys would show up, and they'd be very unassuming, be happy to talk. Roger Don Ray, pretty well known 30s pilot, always made a big thing of coming in, and he'd get out of the airplane when it came, and he would run around to all us young bucks, teenagers and that, and ask us personally how we were doing and what we were doing, so far as our aviation. He was a real neat guy. Harold was a real character, and I'll tell stories about him some other time. But anyway, he flew his monocoop here.
Yeah,
Man, he could get a lot out of that Warner powered coupe and that type thing. Freddie Ludke too. Who else? Bob Hewer. Flew when he had the Super Stearman that Susan Dacey's got now. The first air show he did with it was here, and Bob could really fly that thing.
Oh, who did the Drunken Farmer act?
That was Dick Willits, local
Willits.
guy, and he best cub act in the world.
Yeah.
And
then
Dick passed away a few years ago.
And Doug Reinhardt in the
Reinhardt and the Rose.
Parakeet.
Rose Parakeet. A lot of those guys are here. My dad, a lot of people don't know that they basically stopped air shows or aerobatic contests. I can't remember the exact date, but when Dad started the new flying, especially when we were in Oskaloosa for a few years up north of here, my dad started the National Aerobatic Contest. And it was guys like Harold Cryer and Frank Price, and all those guys would come compete. The EA at that time was not particularly interested in aerobatics. And then because Dad did it for a few years, and the ACA, the Aerobatic Club of America, was formed, and eventually that got dwarfed in with the IAC. But now there's two airplanes up there. Harold Cryer's Chipmunk sitting up there. That's a museum airplane. And beside it is Frank Price's Great Lakes. And those two airplanes, Frank's Great Lakes, he took that airplane to Czechoslovakia in 1960 as the lone American entrant in the World Aerobatic Contest, and brought the Lumpshevok home. And then the Chipmunk, of course, is Harold Cryer, and Harold was one of Frank's proteges, and of course he was a world champion in that. And these guys, again, these guys would be around here, and you might not know. Good story about Frank, I've told a couple times today. Frank used to have an event called Tiger Days down in Texas. And he wanted to have it up here for a couple of years, so he's here. Basically a bunch of Booker guys and aerobatic guys. The Dacey brothers would always show up. In the morning at the briefing, a bunch of the young Booker guys, who apparently did not know much about Frank, started talking about Lumpshevoks being uncontrollable and whatnot. Frank's the one that brought the maneuver back from the World Aerobatic Contest in Czechoslovakia. Frank says, boys, would you like to put some money on that? Money started going on the table, and Frank says, I'll do two. He says, you pick which way you want me to go in and which way you want me to come out. And I don't remember which way it was on the other one, but the second one he needed to come out inverted. You're next! So, anyway, so Frank goes out and crawls in his booth, takes off, gets about 1,500 foot right off the end of the runway. We had a box, and does the two lumps of oxygen. He comes out of the second one upside down, right off the end of the runway, about 700 foot, does an inverted falling leap, lands, taxis up, gets out of the airplane, scoops up the money, goes over and pours himself a beer and says, well, you boys can go, I'll go out and go fly now. And Frank's son, the Dacey brothers, my brother, and John and Charlie Price all used to run around together at fly-ins and that. So anyway, any questions? What time is it, by the way?
8 o'clock.
Holy crap,
Have you almost
that's a half hour.
We're not at the
Do
end
you
yet.
need another beer?
No, you want to go to the end?
Yeah. What the hell do you think we paid for it?
Well, the end is where I live. So.
Well, we could walk down a little further, if you would like.
We'll carry it back if you need
I
to.
did want to ask, like, when you realized that you needed to close down a runway to like make room for more aircraft.
Well, that pretty early on. We used it for a couple years. We still use the runway, but it started expanding quick enough. We started getting traffic, but we needed more area. And one of the things we do, and of course we did it over time, we try to park by type. And that's not just for show, it's primarily for space. You can put 10 Stearmans in a space where you couldn't put a Stearman and a T6 and a 195 in that. It just wouldn't work. It works better to have them all in the same line. And it looks really cool, type thing. So we have always tried to do that.
Except for that group.
Huh?
Except for us. Except for that group.
Yeah, what's this group
you
up?
guys-
Are these the outcasts up here?
You guys get the special ed parking.
Oh,
That's good.
Anyway, well, what else can I tell you about this place? It's obviously,
Now you're famous.
it's our home. It wasn't when we first built it, but my folks built their house, which is down off north end. You guys have probably seen that, which is now my sister's. And where the library was the old farmhouse. And Marcy and I bought that and lived in that for years until we built our house on the other side in 1996. So it's a family thing, and my son Ben's wanting to get so he can build a house out here too.
Well, the runway is well hidden. When you're flying in, you got to be looking really good.
Really?
Yeah, you
I know
do.
exactly where it's at.
Well, and I've been in here maybe 10 times now. But every time I'm going, okay, where's the open area? Oh, there's the planes, because you won't spot the runway.
Well, maybe that's why guys wait to come till Friday so they can spot the airplanes before they can spot the runways and type things. I don't know. Anyway, it's and of course the north-south runway. I don't know if I said it's 2,350 foot, and it was cut out of fill and hills and that type thing. So we try to, we've done some improvements on it this summer. We still got a few to do in that, but it was especially where my driveway crosses, where I know got rough the last couple of years. Does it feel better when you guys go across that?
No. I had no trouble, because I tried not to go across
Wait.
it.
Are you in the T6?
No, I was in a 170, but
I find interstate, it's fine.
I'm
Anyway.
over gross. I got to come in a little hot.
We had a young man that built our memorial did the construction work on the Gone West Memorial, which I hope you guys all take time to go over there and visit, because that was a personal project. The memorial was there, the Gone West Memorial was there, but it needed rebuilt and expanding, and I took that on as a personal fundraiser and whatnot to get that done, to expand it. And I think I raised $35,000 to build that. And because it's for our volunteers, it's for our members. There's unfortunately been a lot of people's ashes spread out here, including my dad and my brothers. And over time, the place may be haunted, but if you see any ghosts, just tell them to go away, because generally they're going to ask you, "Have you got any beer?" I need a beer type
Well,
thing.
The good news is I usually do.
Anyway, it's been, so like I said, 1970, June of 1970. It's been 50 years. It's been I don't know what else I would do, put it that way. And I grew up, even before this airport was here, I grew up in a household where oftentimes we would come home for school and we didn't know what character was going to be there to eat dinner. Associates of my dad, one of my favorite ones, and this will be the last one, I promise. Used to be an old boy, show up a couple times a year by the name of Burl Tibbs. Anybody ever hear that name? Run a flight school in Oklahoma. And Burl and my dad were always selling and buying airplanes and type thing, antique airplanes. And in fact, if you're ever down at the Cessna factory and you're in the cafe, there's a Cessna AW hanging up in there. That's my dad's AW. And Burl and him made the deal for it. Well, Burl would show up. It was before my sister was born, and she might have been very little. Burl would always bring presents, generally books. And I have a book that was given to me by Burl Tibbs when I was 4 years old. I drew in it, I colored in it, I wrote in it. When my brother passed away last year and we're going through his things in his office, and he had his copy of that book still. But you guys really don't know who Burl Tibbs is, do you?
No.
He run a flying school in Oklahoma, very well known, but you might recognize this name. He taught Wiley Post how to fly.
Where in
Wiley Post flight
Oklahoma?
instructor.
If you remember.
What's that?
Where in Oklahoma?
Down the flying school?
Yeah.
Down around Chickasha, I believe, down the Oklahoma City area type thing, as I recall. And that's just it. Might come home some afternoon and there'd be some character like Sam Burgess, if any of you guys knew him, because he was a neat guy. You do. Or Dudley Kelly. Always flew the Gypsy Moth, hauled rides all day long in the Gypsy Moth out of here. He drew the plans for the hats. He's the one that actually made the initial drawing. I mean, John had built the airplane, but Dudley drew the thing. Just Clarence Clark, who test flew every single Traveler ever built. Clarence was a regular here, type thing. He test flew all 5 of the mystery ships. Clarence, very unassuming guy. And that. So it's kind of been a bit of a charmed life for me, I guess, because fortunately I grew up appreciating history. I guess we had no choice in that type thing, but it worked, and it's working with Ben. So
When do you write the story?
what story?
This story.
Oh, I don't know. I'd write it, but I have a couple editors that which would be my wife and my secretary, and they'd probably find my dead body in the ditch.
But you are, and it's ongoing.
Yeah, it is. It is ongoing in that. And of course, you guys, I do write, I put out a monthly email newsletter.
I see it.
I read it
Well,
religiously.
thank you. I'm never sure if anybody reads
Oh
it.
yeah, absolutely.
Come on.
And we've got a couple people that contribute. My brother-in-law, Bob Grimm, contributes, and Josh is flying the OTW, contributes stuff to it, and we get others at times in that. So it's to try to keep you informed, but it's, put it this way, I can guarantee you I know why all famous writers, editors, and publishers drink like fish. They had to, type thing. So with that, let's call it an evening.
No.
I guess I'm going to do this for those that are here Sunday night. I'm going to do it
Brent, I want to thank you.
Well, thank you.
Rip all those non-hairs.
I think it's a lager.